The events in this case happened on September 11, 2001, in the United States of America. However, the planning of the attack started many years before. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, some of the main people involved in this case include Osama bin Laden, who is the leader of the terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. There were also 19 hijackers who carried out the attacks. On the other side were American leaders such as George W. Bush and many security agencies like the FBI and CIA. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the world changed forever. It was a normal Tuesday morning in the United States. People were going to work, children were going to school, and everything seemed peaceful. But within a few hours, one of the most shocking terrorist attacks in history took place. 19 terrorists hijacked 4 passenger airplanes. These planes were not military planes, but normal commercial flights carrying civilians. The attackers had secretly boarded the planes with weapons and took control shortly after takeoff. The first plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. At first, people thought it was an accident. Smoke and fire filled the building, and many people were trapped inside. Emergency services rushed to the scene, trying to rescue those inside. Then, something even more shocking happened. A second plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. At that moment, it became clear that this was not an accident, but a planned attack. People all over the world watched in horror as the towers burned. Inside the buildings, people were trying to escape. Some used the stairs to go down, while others were trapped on higher floors. Firefighters and police officers entered the buildings, risking their lives to save others. Less than 2 hours after the attacks, both towers collapsed. The South Tower fell first, followed by the North Tower. The collapse created massive clouds of dust and debris that spread across New York City. Thousands of people were killed in these buildings alone. The third plane was flown into the Pentagon, which is the headquarters of the United States military, located in Washington, D.C. This caused serious damage to the building and killed many people inside. The fourth plane, known as Flight 93, did not reach its target. Passengers on board realized what was happening and tried to fight back against the hijackers. Because of their bravery, the plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania instead of hitting a major target. All passengers on board died, but many believe they saved many lives. By the end of the day, nearly 3,000 people had died. These included passengers on the planes, workers in the buildings, firefighters, police officers, and ordinary citizens. The attacks were carried out by the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. Their leader, Osama bin Laden, had strong anger toward the United States. He believed that the U.S. was interfering too much in Middle Eastern countries and supporting governments that he did not agree with. Another reason was the presence of U.S. military forces in Saudi Arabia, which is considered a holy land in Islam. Bin Laden and his group saw this as a violation and used it as a reason to justify their actions. The group wanted to send a strong message to the United States and its allies. They believed that by attacking important buildings and killing many people, they would weaken the U.S. and force it to change its policies. The attackers also wanted global attention. By carrying out such a large and shocking attack, they ensured that the whole world would notice them and their message. The impact of the September 11 attacks was huge and felt all over the world. Politically, the United States changed many of its policies. President George W. Bush declared a war on terror, which led to military actions in several countries. One of the biggest results was the war in Afghanistan, where the U.S. tried to remove the Taliban government that was protecting Al-Qaeda. This war lasted for many years and affected millions of people. Security measures were also increased around the world. Airports became much stricter, and new laws were introduced to prevent terrorism. Governments started monitoring people more closely to stop future attacks. Socially, the attacks caused fear and sadness. Many families lost their loved ones. People became more aware of the threat of terrorism. There was also an increase in discrimination against some Muslim communities, as some people wrongly blamed them for the attacks. From a crime point of view, the attacks changed how governments deal with terrorism. it became one of the top priorities for law enforcement agencies. New organizations and systems were created to track and stop terrorist activities. After the attacks, the United States and its allies worked to find those responsible. In 2011, Osama bin Laden was found and killed by U.S. forces in Pakistan. This was seen as a major moment in the fight against terrorism. However, the effects of the attacks are still felt today. Terrorism remains a global issue, and many countries continue to face threats. The World Trade Center site in New York has been rebuilt. A new tower, called One World Trade Center, now stands there. There is also a memorial to honor the victims of the attacks. Every year on September 11th, people remember those who lost their lives. The day is marked by moments of silence, ceremonies, and tributes. The September 11 attacks are not just a story about violence, but also about human strength and unity. During the attacks, many people showed great courage. Firefighters ran into burning buildings, passengers fought hijackers, and strangers helped each other escape. The attacks also showed how connected the world is. People from many countries died that day, and the effects were felt globally. It brought attention to global security and the need for cooperation between countries. Over time, many documentaries, books, and films have been made about the attacks. They try to explain what happened and why, and they keep the memory of the victims alive. Even today, the events of September 11 are studied in schools and discussed in politics. They remain one of the most important events of the 21st century. The war in Afghanistan started in October 2001, shortly after the September 11 attacks, and continued for about 20 years until August 2021. It became one of the longest wars in modern history. Some of the main people involved in this conflict include George W. Bush, who ordered the start of the war, and Osama bin Laden, who was the main target at the beginning. The militant group Al-Qaeda was also central to the conflict. Another important group was the Taliban, which controlled Afghanistan before the war began. Later, other leaders such as Barack Obama and Donald Trump played roles in continuing and later ending the war. On the Afghan side, leaders like Hamid Karzai and Ashraf Ghani were also involved. The war in Afghanistan began as a direct response to the September 11 attacks. The United States government believed that Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, was responsible for the attacks. At that time, the Taliban government in Afghanistan was giving shelter to bin Laden and his group. The United States demanded that the Taliban hand over bin Laden. However, the Taliban refused. Because of this, the U.S., together with its allies, decided to take military action. In October 2001, the U.S. launched airstrikes against Taliban targets in Afghanistan. This was the beginning of the war. Soon after, ground troops entered the country. The goal was to remove the Taliban from power and destroy Al-Qaeda. Within a few months, the Taliban government fell. Many of its leaders escaped or went into hiding. A new government was set up in Afghanistan with support from the United States and other countries. Hamid Karzai became the leader. At first, it seemed like the war was going well, but the Taliban did not disappear. Instead, they regrouped and began fighting back. They used guerrilla warfare, which means they carried out surprise attacks and then disappeared. Over the years, the conflict became more complicated. The Taliban continued to attack Afghan and international forces. Bombings, shootings, and other violent acts became common. Many civilians were also caught in the violence. The United States and its allies tried to rebuild Afghanistan. They built schools, roads, and hospitals. They also trained Afghan soldiers and police so that they could take control of their own security. However, progress was slow and difficult. Corruption in the Afghan government made things worse. Some leaders were accused of stealing money or misusing power. This made it hard for the country to develop properly. As time passed, the war became less popular, especially in the United States. Many people began to question why the war was still continuing after so many years. In 2009, President Barack Obama increased the number of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. This was called a troop surge. The goal was to weaken the Taliban and improve security. While this had some success, it did not end the conflict. Later, under President Donald Trump, the U.S. began talks with the Taliban. In 2020, an agreement was signed that planned for the withdrawal of U.S. troops. In 2021, under President Joe Biden, the final decision was made to withdraw all U.S. forces. As the troops left, the Taliban quickly took control of many parts of the country. By August 2021, the Taliban had captured the capital city, Kabul. The Afghan government collapsed, and President Ashraf Ghani fled the country. The Taliban returned to power after 20 years. The main reason for the war was the September 11 attacks. The United States wanted to destroy al-Qaeda and prevent future attacks. Since the Taliban were protecting al-Qaeda, they also became a target. Another reason was the desire to remove the Taliban government. The Taliban had strict rules and were known for human rights abuses, especially against women. The US and its allies wanted to create a more democratic government in Afghanistan. There were also strategic reasons. Afghanistan is located in an important region between South Asia and the Middle East. Some leaders believed that having influence there was important for global security. However, the situation was complex. Afghanistan had already been in conflict for many years before 2001. There were deep divisions between different groups in the country, which made peace difficult. The impact of the war in Afghanistan was very large and long-lasting. Politically, it changed how countries deal with terrorism. Many nations became more involved in global security efforts. The war also affected international relations. Some countries supported the US, while others criticized the war. It led to debates about military intervention and nation building. Socially, the war caused great suffering. Hundreds of thousands of people died, including civilians, soldiers, and aid workers. Millions of Afghans were forced to leave their homes and became refugees. Women and children were especially affected. While there were improvements in education and rights during the early years of the war, many of these gains were lost after the Taliban returned to power. From a crime perspective, the war led to increased violence and instability. Terrorist attacks, bombings, and kidnappings became common. Drug production, especially opium, also increased in Afghanistan, which contributed to global crime networks. By the end of the war in 2021, the Taliban had regained control of Afghanistan. The United States and its allies withdrew their troops, ending their direct involvement. The return of the Taliban raised many concerns around the world. People worried about human rights, especially for women and minorities. Many countries are still deciding how to deal with the Taliban government. Afghanistan continues to face serious challenges, including poverty, lack of education, and limited health care. The economy has also struggled since the change in government. Even though the war has officially ended, its effects are still being felt. Many veterans, families, and survivors continue to deal with the impact of the conflict. The war in Afghanistan shows how difficult it is to fight terrorism and build a stable government at the same time. While the initial goal of removing al-Qaeda was partly achieved, the long-term goals were harder to reach. One important lesson from this war is that military power alone is not enough to solve deep political and social problems. Building a nation requires strong institutions, trust, and cooperation from the people. The war also showed the human cost of long conflicts. Many lives were lost and many families were affected. It is a reminder of the importance of peace and understanding between nations. Today, the war in Afghanistan is studied as an example of modern conflict. It continues to influence global politics and how countries respond to threats. The Iraq War began in March 2003 and continued for many years, with major combat operations ending in 2011. However, violence and conflict in Iraq continued even after that, especially with the rise of extremist groups. Some of the main people in this case include George W. Bush, who ordered the invasion, and Saddam Hussein, who was the leader of Iraq before the war. Other important figures include Tony Blair, who supported the United States, and later leaders such as Barack Obama. Groups like the Iraqi military, insurgent groups, and later ISIS also played major roles. The Iraq War started in 2003 when the United States and its allies invaded Iraq. The main reason given at the time was that Iraq was believed to have dangerous weapons called weapons of mass destruction, also known as WMDs. These weapons were said to be a threat to the world. The US government also accused Saddam Hussein of supporting terrorist groups. After the September 11 attacks, there was fear that such weapons could be used in future attacks. In March 2003, the United States, along with countries like the United Kingdom, launched military operations against Iraq. The invasion began with airstrikes, followed by ground troops entering the country. The Iraqi military was quickly defeated. Within weeks, US forces entered Baghdad, the capital city. Saddam Hussein's government collapsed, and he went into hiding. In December 2003, Saddam Hussein was captured by US forces. He was later put on trial by an Iraqi court and found guilty of crimes against humanity. In 2006, he was executed. At first, it seemed like the war was over, but soon new problems began. Iraq became unstable. Many groups started fighting each other. Some were loyal to Saddam's old government, while others were new extremist groups. This period is known as the insurgency. These groups used bombings, shootings, and attacks against US soldiers and Iraqi civilians. Suicide bombings became common, and many innocent people were killed. There was also conflict between different religious groups in Iraq, mainly between Sunni and Shia Muslims. This led to a kind of civil war inside the country. The United States tried to rebuild Iraq and create a new government. Elections were held, and a new constitution was written. However, violence continued, making it hard to bring peace. In 2007, the US increased its number of troops in Iraq. This was called the Surge. It helped reduce violence for some time, but the situation was still fragile. By 2011, US forces officially withdrew from Iraq. However, the country was still unstable. Soon after, a new extremist group called ISIS began to grow stronger. ISIS took control of large parts of Iraq and Syria. They used extreme violence and declared their own state. This led to another phase of conflict, with international forces returning to fight against ISIS. The Iraq War happened for several reasons. The main reason given by the United States was the belief that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. However, after the invasion, no such weapons were found. This led to criticism and questions about the real reasons for the war. Another reason was the desire to remove Saddam Hussein from power. He had been a strong and controversial leader for many years. He was accused of human rights abuses, including killing his own citizens. There was also a belief that removing Saddam would help bring democracy to Iraq. The idea was that Iraq could become a model for other countries in the Middle East. Some people also believe that control of oil resources and influence in the region were important factors in the decision to go to war. The impact of the Iraq War was very large and long-lasting. Politically, it changed the balance of power in the Middle East. Iraq went from being a strong, centralized country to a divided and unstable one. The war also affected global politics. Many countries criticized the invasion, especially after no weapons of mass destruction were found. This led to a loss of trust in some governments. Socially, the war caused great suffering. Hundreds of thousands of people died, and millions were displaced. Many families lost their homes and had to move to other countries. There was also damage to infrastructure. Schools, hospitals, and roads were destroyed. This made life very difficult for ordinary people. From a crime perspective, the war led to increased violence and lawlessness. Armed groups operated freely, and kidnappings, bombings, and killings became common. The rise of ISIS was one of the most serious outcomes. This group carried out many violent attacks and spread fear across the region and beyond. Although the main phase of the Iraq War ended in 2011, its effects are still present today. Iraq continues to face political challenges and security issues. ISIS has been largely defeated as a territorial force, but it still exists in smaller groups. The Iraqi government continues to work with international partners to maintain security. The country is slowly rebuilding, but progress is uneven. Corruption, unemployment, and political disagreements remain major problems. The war is often discussed as an example of how difficult it is to rebuild a country after conflict. It also shows the risks of going to war based on uncertain information. The Iraq War is one of the most debated conflicts in modern history. Many people still argue about whether it was justified or not. One of the biggest lessons from the war is the importance of accurate information. The belief in weapons of mass destruction was a key reason for the invasion, but it turned out to be wrong. Another lesson is that removing a leader does not always bring stability. After Saddam Hussein was removed, Iraq faced many new problems that were difficult to solve. The war also showed how conflicts can create new dangers. The rise of ISIS was partly linked to the instability caused by the war. At the same time, there were efforts to improve life in Iraq. Elections, new laws, and rebuilding projects were important steps, even though progress was slow. Today, the Iraq War is studied by historians, political leaders, and students. It remains an important example of modern warfare, international politics, and the challenges of peacebuilding. The Enron scandal mainly happened between the late 1990s and 2001. The company collapsed in December 2001, but investigations and court cases continued for many years after that. Some of the most important people in this case include Jeffrey Skilling, Kenneth Lay, and Andrew Fastow. These were top leaders in the company. Another important organization involved was Enron itself, which was once one of the biggest companies in the United States. Also involved was Arthur Andersen, which was responsible for auditing Enron's financial records. The Enron scandal is one of the biggest corporate crime cases in history. It is a story about greed, lies, and how powerful people misused their positions. Enron was once a very successful company. It was based in Texas and worked in the energy sector, especially electricity and natural gas. Over time, it expanded into other areas like trading energy contracts and even internet services. Many people saw Enron as a smart and innovative company. The company's leaders, especially Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay, were praised for their ideas. Investors trusted them, and Enron's stock price grew very high. Many employees also invested their savings in the company's shares. However, behind the success, there were serious problems. Enron was not as profitable as it appeared. Instead of showing real losses, the company used complex accounting tricks to hide its debts. Andrew Fastow, the chief financial officer, created special partnerships and companies that were used to move Enron's debts away from its main financial statements. This made the company look healthier than it really was. These actions were not honest. They were designed to trick investors, employees, and the public. Enron reported profits that did not truly exist, and many people believed the company was doing well. Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm responsible for checking Enron's books, failed to properly report these problems. In fact, some employees of the firm were later found to have destroyed important documents related to the case. In 2001, things began to fall apart. Reports started to come out questioning Enron's financial practices. Journalists and analysts began to investigate the company more closely. As the truth started to come out, investors lost confidence. Enron's stock price began to fall quickly. Employees who had invested their savings in the company lost large amounts of money. In December 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. It was one of the largest bankruptcies in U.S. history at the time. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, and many people lost their life savings. The Enron scandal happened mainly because of greed and lack of honesty. The company's leaders wanted to show high profits and keep the stock price rising. This would make them look successful and also earn them more money. Another reason was poor oversight. The systems that were supposed to check and control the company's actions did not work properly. The board of directors did not fully understand or question the complex financial arrangements. The accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, also failed in its duty. Instead of warning the public, it allowed the false reporting to continue. There was also a culture inside Enron that encouraged risk-taking and rewarded success without always asking how that success was achieved. Employees were under pressure to perform, and some were willing to break rules to meet expectations. The impact of the Enron scandal was very large. Politically, it led to new laws and regulations in the United States. One of the most important was the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which was designed to improve corporate governance and prevent similar fraud in the future. The scandal also damaged trust in big companies. Many people began to question whether other companies were also hiding information or acting dishonestly. Socially, the effects were devastating for employees and investors. thousands of people lost their jobs. Many employees had invested their retirement savings in Enron stock, and when the company collapsed, they lost everything. Families were affected, and many people faced financial hardship. The scandal showed how corporate actions can have real effects on ordinary people. From a crime perspective, the case became an example of white-collar crime. This means crimes committed by people in positions of power, usually involving money and deception, rather than violence. After the collapse of Enron, several top executives were investigated and charged with crimes. Jeffrey Skilling was found guilty of fraud and sentenced to prison. Andrew Fastow also pleaded guilty and served time in prison. Kenneth Lay was found guilty as well, but he died before he could be sentenced. Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm, was also found guilty of wrongdoing. As a result, the company lost its license to operate as an auditor and eventually collapsed. This showed how serious the consequences of the scandal were. Today, Enron no longer exists. However, its story is still studied in business schools and used as an example of what can go wrong when companies act without honesty and responsibility. The Enron scandal teaches many important lessons. One of the main lessons is the importance of transparency. Companies be honest about their financial situation so that investors and the public can make informed decisions. Another lesson is the need for strong oversight. Boards of directors, auditors, and regulators must do their jobs properly to prevent fraud. The scandal also shows the dangers of a culture that focuses only on success and profit without considering ethics. When people are rewarded only for results, they may be tempted to take shortcuts or break rules. It also highlights the importance of accountability. The people responsible for the fraud were held accountable through the legal system. This helps to maintain trust in society. Finally, the Enron case reminds us that crime is not always violent. Financial crimes can also cause great harm, affecting thousands or even millions of people. Even today, the name Enron is often used as a warning. It represents what can happen when power is misused and honesty is ignored. This case happened in early 2002, mainly between January and February. It took place shortly after the September 11 attacks, during a time when global tension about terrorism was very high. The main person in this case was Daniel Pearl, who worked for the Wall Street Journal. He was known for his calm personality and his dedication to telling true stories. Another important person was Ahmed Omar Said Sheikh, who was accused of organizing the kidnapping. The case also involved members of extremist groups linked to Al-Qaeda. Authorities in Pakistan and the United States were also deeply involved in trying to rescue Daniel Pearl and later investigate the crime. The story of Daniel Pearl is one of the most shocking and sad crime cases involving a journalist. It shows the dangers that journalists can face when they try to report the truth in dangerous places. In January 2002, Daniel Pearl traveled to Karachi, Pakistan. He was working on a story about terrorism and was trying to understand the connections between extremist groups. At that time, the world was still reacting to the September 11 attacks, and many journalists were investigating similar topics. Daniel Pearl arranged to meet someone who he believed could help him with his story. He thought the meeting would give him useful information. However, this meeting was a trap. On January 23, 2002, Daniel Pearl was kidnapped. His captors contacted news organizations and made demands. They accused him of being a spy, even though he was only a journalist doing his work. They sent emails and messages with threats. They demanded the release of prisoners and made political statements. The situation quickly became serious, and governments in both Pakistan and the United States started working to find him. For several days, there was hope that Daniel Pearl could be rescued. Investigators tried to trace emails and follow leads. His family and colleagues waited anxiously for news. Sadly, the situation ended in tragedy. Daniel Pearl was murdered by his captors. A video was later released showing his killing. This shocked the world and caused deep sadness and anger. The video was used as a tool of fear. It was meant to send a message and show the power of the group behind the crime. Many people found it disturbing and painful to watch. The case became one of the most well-known examples of violence against journalists. The kidnapping and murder of Daniel Pearl happened because of extremist beliefs and political motives. The group responsible wanted to gain attention and spread fear. They believed that by targeting a Western journalist, they could send a message to the United States and other countries. They also wanted to use the situation to make demands and promote their ideas. Another reason was misinformation. The kidnappers falsely accused Daniel Pearl of being involved in intelligence activities. This was not true, but it was used as a justification for their actions. The case also shows how dangerous it can be to work in areas where there is political instability and extremist activity. The impact of this case was very strong around the world. Politically, it increased concern about terrorism and the safety of journalists. Governments began to take more steps to protect their citizens abroad. The case also strengthened cooperation between countries in fighting terrorism. Pakistan and the United States worked together to investigate the crime and arrest those responsible. Socially, the murder of Daniel Pearl caused deep sadness. Many people saw him as a symbol of truth and courage. His death reminded the world of the risks journalists take to report important stories. The case also raised awareness about the importance of press freedom. Journalists play a key role in informing the public, and their safety became a major concern. From a crime perspective, the case highlighted the use of kidnapping and murder by extremist groups. It showed how such acts are used to create fear and gain attention. After the murder, authorities worked to find those responsible. Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh was arrested and later convicted in Pakistan. He was sentenced to prison for his role in the crime. Other individuals were also arrested and charged. However, the case remained complex, with legal challenges and appeals over the years. The story of Daniel Pearl did not end with his death. His family started efforts to promote understanding between different cultures and religions. They created the Daniel Pearl Foundation, which supports journalism and cross-cultural dialogue. Today, Daniel Pearl is remembered as a brave journalist who believed in truth and understanding. The Daniel Pearl case teaches many important lessons. One of the main lessons is the importance of truth and the role of journalists in society. Journalists often work in difficult and dangerous conditions to bring information to the public. Another lesson is the danger of extremism. When people follow extreme ideas without understanding or compassion, it can lead to violence and suffering. The case also shows the importance of international cooperation. Countries need to work together to fight crime and protect people from such acts. It also reminds us of the human side of global events. Behind every news story, there are real people with families, hopes, and dreams. Daniel Pearl was not just a journalist. He was a husband, a son, and a friend. His loss was deeply felt by those who knew him and by many others around the world. Even today, his story is used to teach about courage, truth, and the importance of understanding different cultures. It encourages people to stand against violence and support peace. The Bali bombings took place on October 12, 2002, in Indonesia. However, the planning of the attack happened months before, and investigations and court cases continued for many years after the incident. The attacks were carried out by members of Jemaah Islamiyah, a militant group linked to Al-Qaeda. Some of the key individuals involved include Amrozi bin Nur Hashim, Imam Samudra, and Ali Gufran. These men were later arrested and charged for their roles in the attack. Indonesian police and international investigators, including teams from Australia, played an important role in solving the case. The Bali bombings were one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in Southeast Asia. The attacks happened in Bali, an island in Indonesia that is very popular with tourists from around the world. On the night of October 12, 2002, many people were enjoying their evening in Kuta, a busy tourist area. There were nightclubs, restaurants, and bars filled with both local people and international visitors. At around 11 p.m., a small bomb exploded inside a nightclub called Paddy's Pub. This first explosion caused panic and forced people to run outside into the street. Just seconds later, a much larger bomb exploded outside another nightclub called the Sari Club. This second explosion was extremely powerful. It destroyed buildings, caused fires, and killed many people instantly. The force of the explosion was so strong that it damaged nearby buildings and vehicles. Flames spread quickly, making it difficult for people to escape. Many victims were trapped inside or injured by the blast. At the same time, another bomb exploded near the United States consulate in Bali, although this caused less damage and no deaths. Emergency services rushed to the scene. Police, firefighters, and medical workers worked through the night, trying to rescue survivors and help the injured. Hospitals were quickly filled with victims. Many people had serious burns and injuries. Doctors and nurses worked under pressure to treat as many people as possible. In total, 202 people were killed, and more than 200 others were injured. Victims came from many different countries, including Indonesia, Australia, the United Kingdom, and others. This made the attack a global tragedy. The scene after the attack was heartbreaking. Families were searching for loved ones, and many people were in shock. The entire world watched as news of the attack spread. The Bali bombings were carried out by extremists who wanted to promote their beliefs and create fear. The group Jemaah Islamiyah aimed to establish an Islamic state in Southeast Asia. They chose Bali because it was a place where many foreigners gathered, especially from Western countries. By targeting such a location, they wanted to send a strong message and gain global attention. The attackers were also influenced by extremist ideologies linked to Al-Qaeda. They believed that attacking Western targets was a way to fight against what they saw as foreign influence. Another reason was to create fear and instability in the region. By carrying out such a large attack, they hoped to damage tourism and the economy and show that governments could not fully protect people. The impact of the Bali bombings was very significant. Politically, it led to stronger cooperation between countries in fighting terrorism. Indonesia worked closely with other nations, especially Australia, to investigate the attack. The Indonesian government also introduced stricter anti-terrorism laws. Security measures were increased, and more efforts were made to track and stop extremist groups. Socially, the attack caused deep sadness and fear. Many families lost loved ones, and communities were affected both in Indonesia and around the world. Tourism in Bali dropped sharply after the attack. Many people were afraid to travel there, which affected local businesses and workers who depended on tourism. From a crime perspective, the case showed how organized terrorist groups can plan and carry out large attacks. It also highlighted the importance of intelligence and law enforcement in preventing such crimes. After the bombings, Indonesian authorities launched a major investigation. With help from international agencies, they were able to identify and arrest many of the people involved. Amrozi, Imam Samudra, and Ali Gufran were found guilty of their roles in the attack. They were sentenced to death and later executed in 2008. Other members of the group were also arrested and given prison sentences. The case was seen as a success for international cooperation in fighting terrorism. Today, Bali has recovered and remains a popular tourist destination. Security has been improved, and the island continues to welcome visitors from around the world. Every year, memorial events are held to remember the victims. These events bring together families, survivors, and communities to honor those who lost their lives. The Bali bombings remind us of the dangers of extremism and the impact of terrorism on ordinary people. The victims were not involved in politics or conflict, they were simply enjoying their lives. The case also shows the importance of global cooperation. Without teamwork between countries, it would have been much harder to find those responsible. Another important lesson is the need to address the causes of extremism. Understanding why people join such groups can help prevent future attacks. The bravery of the emergency workers and medical teams is also worth remembering. They worked under very difficult conditions to save lives and help the injured. The recovery of Bali shows the strength of communities. Even after such a tragedy, people came together to rebuild and support each other. Today, the Bali bombings are studied as an example of modern terrorism. They serve as a reminder of the need for peace, understanding, and strong efforts to prevent violence. The trial of Saddam Hussein, took place between 2005 and 2006, after he was captured in December 2003 during the Iraq War. His execution happened on December 30th, 2006. The central figure in this case was Saddam Hussein, who ruled Iraq from 1979 until 2003. Other important people included Iraqi judges and prosecutors who handled the trial, as well as witnesses who came forward to give evidence. Leaders such as George W. Bush were also indirectly involved because of the invasion that led to Saddam's capture. There were also other former Iraqi officials who were tried alongside Saddam Hussein for their roles in crimes committed during his rule. The trial of Saddam Hussein is one of the most important political and legal cases of the 21st century. It marked the fall of a longtime leader and raised many questions about justice, power, and accountability. Saddam Hussein was the president of Iraq for over 20 years. During his time in power, he ruled with strong control. Some people supported him, but many others accused him of using violence and fear to stay in power. After the Iraq War began in 2003, Saddam Hussein went into hiding. For several months, U.S. forces searched for him. In December 2003, he was found hiding in a small underground space near his hometown. His capture was shown on television and seen around the world. After his capture, plans were made to put him on trial. The Iraqi government, with support from international advisors, created a special court called the Iraqi Special Tribunal to handle the case. The charges against Saddam Hussein were serious. One of the main cases focused on the killing of 148 people in the town of Dujail in 1982. These people were accused of trying to assassinate Saddam, and in response, many were arrested, tortured, and killed. The trial officially began in October 2005. It took place in Baghdad under heavy security. Saddam Hussein appeared in court and often spoke strongly, denying the charges against him. He said that he was still the rightful leader of Iraq. The trial faced many challenges. There were security risks, and some lawyers and judges were attacked or killed during the process. This made the situation very tense and dangerous. Despite these difficulties, the trial continued. Witnesses gave testimony about what had happened in Dujail. Documents were presented as evidence. The court tried to show that Saddam Hussein had ordered or approved actions that led to the deaths of innocent people. In November 2006, the court found Saddam Hussein guilty of crimes against humanity. He was sentenced to death by hanging. After the sentence, there were appeals and discussions about the decision. However, the sentence was upheld, and on December 30th, 2006, Saddam Hussein was executed. His execution was also recorded and later leaked, causing further debate and controversy around the world. The trial happened because of the need for justice after years of alleged abuse of power. Many people in Iraq believed that Saddam Hussein should be held responsible for actions taken during his rule. The Iraq War made the trial possible because it removed him from power and allowed a new government to take control. This new government wanted to show that leaders could be held accountable for their actions. Another reason was to bring closure to victims and their families. Many people had suffered during Saddam's rule, and the trial was seen as a way to recognize their pain. However, the trial was also influenced by politics. Some critics argued that it was shaped by the interests of powerful countries involved in the Iraq War. The impact of Saddam Hussein's trial was very large. Politically, it showed that even powerful leaders can be held accountable for their actions. This was seen as an important moment for justice. However, it also created divisions. Some people believed the trial was fair, while others thought it was influenced by politics. This led to debates about international law and fairness. Socially, the trial had mixed effects. For some victims, it brought a sense of justice and closure. For others, it reopened old wounds and increased tensions between different groups in Iraq. The execution of Saddam Hussein also caused strong reactions. Some people celebrated, while others were unhappy or angry. This showed how divided opinions were. From a crime perspective, the case became an example of how leaders can be tried for crimes against humanity. It helped bring attention to international justice systems and the importance of human rights. Saddam Hussein is no longer alive, but his legacy continues to affect Iraq and the wider region. The trial remains an important example of how justice can be carried out after a conflict. Iraq continues to deal with the effects of his rule and the war that removed him. Political instability, security issues, and social divisions are still challenges in the country. The case also influenced how future leaders and conflicts are handled. It showed that there can be consequences for actions taken while in power. The trial of Saddam Hussein raises many important questions. One of the main questions is about justice. What does it mean to have a fair trial, especially in a country recovering from war? Another issue is the role of international influence. Some people believe the trial should have been handled by an international court to ensure fairness. Others believe it was right for Iraq to handle its own case. The case also highlights the importance of human rights. Leaders have a responsibility to protect their citizens, and when they fail, there should be consequences. At the same time, the trial shows how difficult it is to achieve justice in a divided society. Different groups may have different views, and it can be hard to find agreement. The story of Saddam Hussein is also a reminder of the dangers of absolute power. When one person has too much control, it can lead to abuse and suffering. Today, the trial is studied by lawyers, historians, and political leaders. It remains a key example of modern justice and the challenges that come with it. The Madrid train bombings happened on March 11, 2004, in Spain. The attacks took place during the morning rush hour, when many people were traveling to work. Investigations and court cases continued for several years after the attack. The attacks were carried out by a group of extremists inspired by Al-Qaeda. The group included several individuals living in Spain, many of whom were linked to radical networks. Spanish authorities, including police and intelligence services, played a major role in investigating the case. Political leaders such as José María Aznar were also involved in responding to the crisis. The Madrid train bombings were one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in Europe. The events of that day shocked Spain and the entire world. On the morning of March 11, 2004, many people were using commuter trains in Madrid. It was a normal weekday, and the trains were full of workers, students, and other passengers. At around 7:30 a.m., a series of explosions took place on 4 different trains. In total, 10 bombs exploded within a short period of time. The bombs had been placed inside backpacks and left on the trains. The explosions caused massive destruction. Train cars were torn apart, and many passengers were killed instantly. Others were seriously injured. The scenes were chaotic, with smoke, debris, and people crying for help. Emergency services responded quickly. Police, firefighters, and medical teams rushed to the locations. They worked to rescue survivors and take the injured to hospitals. The attack killed 193 people and injured more than 2,000 others. Victims came from different backgrounds and nationalities, making it a tragedy that affected many communities. The city of Madrid was in shock. Families were searching for loved ones, and hospitals were overwhelmed with patients. The entire country came together in grief. At first, there was confusion about who was responsible. The Spanish government initially suspected a local separatist group. However, evidence soon pointed to extremist individuals inspired by Al-Qaeda. A few days after the attack, police identified several suspects. Some of them were later found hiding in an apartment. When police tried to arrest them, the suspects caused an explosion, killing themselves. The Madrid train bombings were carried out as an act of terrorism. The attackers wanted to create fear and send a political message. One of the main reasons was Spain's involvement in the Iraq War. At that time, Spain was part of the coalition supporting the United States in Iraq. The attackers believed that by carrying out the bombings, they could pressure Spain to withdraw its troops from Iraq. They also wanted to gain attention and spread their extremist ideas. Another reason was the influence of global terrorist networks. The attackers were inspired by the actions and messages of Al-Qaeda, even if they were not directly controlled by the group. The impact of the Madrid train bombings was very strong. Politically, it had immediate effects. Just 3 days after the attack, Spain held national elections. The attacks influenced public opinion, and a new government came into power. the new leaders decided to withdraw Spanish troops from Iraq, which was seen by some as a response to the attacks. The bombings also changed how Spain and other European countries dealt with terrorism. Security measures were increased, especially in public transport systems. Socially, the attacks caused deep sadness and fear. Many families lost loved ones, and communities were affected across the country. There was also a strong sense of unity, as people came together to support each other. Large protests were held against terrorism, with millions of people participating. These protests showed that the public rejected violence and stood for peace. From a crime perspective, the case showed how terrorist groups can plan coordinated attacks in public places. It also highlighted the importance of intelligence and cooperation between countries. After the attacks, Spanish authorities carried out a detailed investigation. Many suspects were arrested and later put on trial. In 2007, a Spanish court convicted several individuals for their roles in the bombings. They received long prison sentences. The court found that the attacks were inspired by extremist ideology linked to Al-Qaeda. Over time, Spain improved its security systems and strengthened its laws against terrorism. The country continues to work with international partners to prevent future attacks. Every year, Spain remembers the victims of the Madrid train bombings. Memorial events are held to honor those who lost their lives and to support their families. The Madrid train bombings are an important example of modern terrorism. They show how attacks can be carried out in everyday places, affecting ordinary people. One of the key lessons from this case is the importance of preparedness. Governments and emergency services must be ready to respond quickly to such events. Another lesson is the power of unity. After the attacks, the people of Spain came together in large numbers to reject violence and support each other. The case also highlights the role of politics in times of crisis. Decisions made by leaders can have a major impact on how events unfold and how countries respond. It also shows the importance of accurate information. Early confusion about who was responsible led to criticism and debate. This emphasizes the need for careful investigation before making conclusions. Finally, the Madrid train bombings remind us of the human cost of terrorism. Behind every number is a real person, with family and friends. Remembering them helps ensure that such tragedies are not forgotten. The London bombings took place on July 7, 2005, in the United Kingdom. The attacks happened during the morning rush hour. Investigations, arrests, and public discussions continued for many years after the event. The attacks were carried out by 4 individuals who had been living in the United Kingdom. They were inspired by extremist ideas linked to Al-Qaeda. At the time, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was Tony Blair. Emergency services, including the police, ambulance teams, and firefighters, played a major role in responding to the attacks. Many ordinary citizens were also involved, both as victims and as helpers who assisted others during the crisis. The London bombings, also known as the 7/7 attacks, were a series of coordinated terrorist attacks that shocked the United Kingdom and the world. On the morning of July 7, 2005, millions of people in London were traveling to work using public transport. The city's underground train system, known as the Tube, was especially busy. At around 8:50 a.m., 3 bombs exploded almost at the same time on 3 different underground trains. These explosions happened within minutes of each other, causing confusion and panic. The blasts were very powerful. Train carriages were destroyed, and many passengers were killed or seriously injured. The underground tunnels made the situation worse, as it was difficult for people to escape quickly. About an hour later, a 4th bomb exploded on a double-decker bus in central London. This happened in Tavistock Square. The bus had been diverted because of earlier disruptions, and it was crowded with passengers. The explosion destroyed the bus and caused more deaths and injuries. The attack in the open street was seen by many people, making the situation even more frightening. In total, 52 people were killed, and more than 700 were injured. The victims included people from different countries and backgrounds. Emergency services responded quickly. Police officers, firefighters, and medical teams rushed to the scenes. They worked in very difficult conditions, especially in the underground tunnels. People in London also helped each other. Strangers supported the injured, offered water, and helped guide people to safety. There was a strong sense of unity during the crisis. The city was brought to a standstill. Public transport was shut down, and many people were stranded. Communication systems were also affected, making it harder for people to contact their families. The London bombings were carried out by individuals who had adopted extremist beliefs. They believed they were acting for a cause, although their actions caused great harm to innocent people. One of the reasons behind the attacks was the United Kingdom's involvement in international conflicts, especially the Iraq War. The attackers wanted to send a message and create fear. By targeting public transport, they chose places where many people gather, ensuring maximum impact. They were also influenced by global terrorist ideologies. These ideas encouraged violence and presented it as a way to achieve political or religious goals. The impact of the London bombings was very significant. Politically, the attacks led to stronger anti-terrorism laws in the United Kingdom. The government increased its efforts to monitor and prevent extremist activities. Security measures were improved, especially in transport systems. Surveillance, intelligence sharing, and emergency planning became more advanced. Socially, the attacks caused deep sadness and fear. Many families lost loved ones, and survivors had to deal with physical and emotional injuries. However, the attacks also brought people together. There was a strong sense of unity and resilience in London. People supported each other and showed that they would not be divided by fear. There were also concerns about discrimination. Some communities felt unfairly targeted or blamed, which led to discussions about tolerance and understanding. From a crime perspective, the case showed how individuals can become radicalized and carry out attacks within their own country. This raised concerns about homegrown terrorism and how to prevent it. After the attacks, a full investigation was carried out. Authorities worked to understand how the attackers planned and carried out the bombings. Reports were published to learn lessons and improve future responses. These reports helped shape new policies and security strategies. The United Kingdom continues to invest in counterterrorism efforts. Police and intelligence agencies work closely to identify and stop threats before they happen. Memorials have been built to honor the victims. Every year, ceremonies are held to remember those who lost their lives and to support their families. London remains a major global city, and its people continue to show strength and resilience. The London bombings are an important example of how terrorism can affect everyday life. The attacks happened during a normal morning, showing how quickly situations can change. One important lesson is the need for awareness and preparedness. Governments and communities must work together to reduce risks and respond effectively. Another lesson is the importance of unity. After the attacks, people from different backgrounds came together, showing that society can remain strong even in difficult times. The case also highlights the issue of radicalization. Understanding how individuals adopt extremist ideas is key to preventing future attacks. It also reminds us of the human cost of violence. Each victim had a life, a family, and dreams. Remembering them helps keep the focus on the importance of peace. Finally, the London bombings show that while terrorism can cause fear, it does not have to define a society. The response of the people of London showed courage, compassion, and strength. The Orange Revolution took place mainly between November 2004 and January 2005 in Ukraine. However, the political tensions that led to it had been building for many years before that. Some of the most important people in this case include Viktor Yushchenko, who became the main figure of the protest movement, and Viktor Yanukovych, who was his main opponent in the presidential election. Another important figure was Yulia Tymoshenko, who strongly supported Yushchenko and played a key role in organizing protests. The Ukrainian people were also central to the movement. Thousands of ordinary citizens took part in protests, demanding fair elections and honest leadership. The Orange Revolution was a large political movement in Ukraine that focused on fairness, democracy, and the right of people to choose their leaders. In 2004, Ukraine held a presidential election. The two main candidates were Viktor Yushchenko and Viktor Yanukovych. The election was very important because it would decide the future direction of the country. Yushchenko was seen as a leader who wanted closer ties with Europe and more democratic reforms. Yanukovych was supported by the government at the time and was seen as closer to Russia. During the election campaign, there were many concerns about fairness. Reports suggested that the government was using its power to support Yanukovych. There were also claims of media bias and pressure on voters. One shocking event happened during the campaign. Viktor Yushchenko suddenly became very ill. His face changed dramatically, and it was later confirmed that he had been poisoned. This raised serious concerns about political violence. Despite these issues, the election went ahead. The first round did not produce a clear winner, so a second round was held in November 2004. After the second round, officials announced that Viktor Yanukovych had won. However, many people believed that the election was not fair. There were reports of vote rigging, intimidation, and other irregularities. In response, thousands of people began to protest. They gathered in the capital city, Kyiv, and other parts of the country. Protesters wore orange clothing and carried orange flags, which became the symbol of the movement. The protests were mostly peaceful. People camped in public squares, sang songs, and gave speeches. They demanded a new election and fair results. The protests grew larger over time. At their peak, hundreds of thousands of people were involved. The movement gained attention from around the world. The Ukrainian Supreme Court reviewed the election results. After examining the evidence, the court decided that the election had been unfair. It ordered a new vote to be held. In December 2004, the election was repeated. This time, international observers monitored the process closely to ensure fairness. In the new vote, Viktor Yushchenko won. He became the president of Ukraine, marking a major victory for the protest movement. The Orange Revolution happened because people wanted fair elections and honest leadership. Many Ukrainians were tired of corruption and lack of transparency in government. Another reason was the desire for democracy. People wanted to have a real voice in choosing their leaders and shaping the future of their country. The poisoning of Viktor Yushchenko also played a role. It increased public anger and raised fears about the use of violence in politics. There were also larger political influences. Ukraine was seen as being between Europe and Russia, and different groups had different visions for the country's future. The Orange Revolution had a major impact on Ukraine and beyond. Politically, it showed that peaceful protests can lead to change. It strengthened democratic processes and encouraged other movements in different countries. The event also changed Ukraine's political direction, at least for some time. It brought leaders to power who supported reform and closer ties with Europe. Socially, the revolution brought people together. Citizens from different backgrounds united for a common cause. It created a sense of national identity and pride. However, not all effects were positive. The political divisions did not completely disappear. Over time, disagreements between leaders led to new challenges. From a crime perspective, the case highlighted issues such as election fraud and political corruption. It showed how these problems can lead to large-scale unrest. After the Orange Revolution, Viktor Yushchenko became president. However, his time in power faced many difficulties. Political disagreements and economic problems made it hard to achieve all the promised changes. In later years, Viktor Yanukovych returned to politics and eventually became president in 2010. This showed that political change is not always permanent. The issues that led to the Orange Revolution continued to affect Ukraine. In 2014, another major movement took place, showing that the struggle for reform was ongoing. Today, the Orange Revolution is remembered as an important moment in Ukraine's history. It is seen as a symbol of people standing up for their rights. The Orange Revolution teaches important lessons about democracy and the power of people. One key lesson is that peaceful protest can bring change. When people come together and speak with one voice, they can influence the direction of their country. Another lesson is the importance of fair elections. Elections are a basic part of democracy, and they must be free from manipulation and corruption. The case also shows that change is not always easy or permanent. Even after a successful movement, challenges can continue. Building a strong and fair system takes time and effort. It also highlights the role of unity. During the revolution, people from different regions and backgrounds worked together. This unity was a major strength of the movement. At the same time, the case reminds us of the risks in politics. The poisoning of Yushchenko showed that political competition can sometimes become dangerous. Today, the Orange Revolution is studied as an example of peaceful political change. It continues to inspire people around the world who seek fairness, justice, and democracy.